private images from a lost world of communism in Eastern Europe. The communists claimed they were building a socialist paradise. Most people think they created hell on earth. But what was life really like for the people of Eastern Europe, effectively imprisoned behind the Iron Curtain? This series, through rarely seen archive and personal testimony, captures the real lives of those living under communist rule. It was a way of life that disappeared when communism collapsed across Eastern Europe 2 decades ago. East Germany was socialism's showcase state. One of its iconic faces was a children's TV puppet called Sandman. He was designed to send East Germany's children happy to bed and to win their hearts for socialism.
It simply had to reflect life in East Germany. It had to transmit class consciousness and feelings of solidarity.
The Sandman was made by people who used to live under socialism. They had a vision of socialism and communism and were happy to spread that vision, namely the vision of a better world, a more just world.
And East Germany's role model for that better world was the Sandman's favorite holiday destination, the Soviet Union. East Germany was born out of the ruins of the Second World War. It would emerge from the Soviet zone of occupation established with the total defeat of Nazi Germany. Everywhere, symbols of the Soviet Union and images of its leader, Joseph Stalin, showed where the real power now lay. In the summer of 1945, 14-year-old schoolgirl Erika Riemann went back to her old school in the company of friends. A day she would never forget.
Wo früher Adolf Hitler hing, hing jetzt das Bild von.
We saw that Hitler's portrait had been replaced with Stalin's.
Ich bin an das Bild gegangen und habe dann da eine Schleife um den Bart gemalt.
So I drew a bow with some lipstick on Stalin's moustache.
Das war ein Streich,
Because when I saw his portrait, I thought he looked sad.
da hatte ich mich
That wasn't a good move. I never wanted to be an artist again in my whole life.
das Leben nie wieder machen.
Erika was sentenced to 10 years in prison, part of which she spent at the former Nazi concentration camp at Sachsenhausen. Here she was subjected to a mock execution.
Und dann kamen wir dann in den
We had to go into a shower room.
Und da wurde also dann gesagt, dass sie das jetzt mit uns.
They told us they would do the same things they had done to the Jews, that there wouldn't be water coming out of the showers but gas.
Und das war auch eine.
That was a very terrifying situation.
Fürchterliche Situation. Es war schon eine richtig.
There was great panic and then great relief when only warm water came out.
Wasser kam. War eine Verlegung, war ich in Torgau.
I spent time in the fortress at Torgau, where many women were raped. I hadn't been raped yet, but the decision had been made that I'd be next.
Still only a child, Erika suffered repeated physical and sexual abuse, like this episode in Torgau prison.
Das hatte mein ganzes Leben.
It's affected my whole life. I hadn't had any sexual experience at the time, but I had to take all my clothes off and to sit on a bowl which was pushed down the stairs amongst all the men's baying. I can't talk about it. I've felt the repercussions till this day. I felt ashamed and dirty. I'm a mother and a grandmother, but after all these years, it still remains, and I still feel dirty and degraded. It's very hard to endure such things when you're that young.
Over 150,000 Germans were detained by the communists in special camps like Sachsenhausen. Almost a third of them died in captivity.
In August 1952, 80,000 young pioneers were invited to Dresden because we, the children, had to carry on socialism. At the age of 12, I was proud to attend the first pioneer meeting in Dresden. We knew about the Hitler Youth during the Third Reich, that they also wore neckties and played drums and trumpets. They wore uniforms. When the pioneer organization was founded, many adults were opposed because it reminded them of the Hitler regime. So parents said that's not going to happen to our children, not again. But my father was a teacher, and so he had the task of recruiting children to the pioneer organizations.
The pioneers served the newly formed workers' and peasants' state of East Germany, a one-party dictatorship modeled on the Soviet Union. Its propaganda stressed the dangers from Western imperialism, including the bizarre claim that America was dropping plagues of Colorado beetles from the air to destroy socialist crops.
They would praise us for having collected those beetles. The very same American aeroplanes that had bombed Dresden, they would tell us, had also unleashed those beetles. Evil American imperialism.
Der böse amerikanische Imperialismus. Und wir Kinder machen jetzt das Gelöbnis.
We made our first pioneer vow in Dresden. We children vowed that we would do anything to avoid such a terrible and evil war in the future. 80,000 children together said, that we promise. And I made that vow not with my mind, but with my heart.
Stalin war der große Held.
Stalin was the great hero. He was a god to us. Stalin the intelligent, Stalin the wise.
Stalin der Weise. Und Stalin ist derjenige.
Stalin was the representative of the free world of socialism, and he was our role model. We would follow him unconditionally.
Ihm werden wir bedingungslos folgen.
Wir grüßen die Heimat weit und fett, wir wollen sie schützen und hegen. Wir reichen die Kinder der ganzen Welt die Hand zur Freundschaft entgegen. Der schönste Gruß unserer Republik gilt Josef Stalin und Wilhelm Pieck. Wir grüßen als Kinder der neuen Zeit, Pioniere sind immer bereit. Wir lieben.
This rally was a high point for Stalinism in East Germany. Within a year, Stalin was dead, and the Communist Party faced open insurrection on its streets. On the 17th of June 1953, the workers rose up against the workers' and peasants' state. What had begun as a strike amongst construction workers over pay soon turned into wider demands for free elections and the resignation of the government itself. By late morning, Soviet troops stationed in East Germany had to intervene.
At 11:30 we heard the tanks, the chains of the tanks. Then we realized the Russians were coming. The crowd started howling. And when the people at the end of the demonstration refused to give way, the soldiers fired in the air. And when you hear gunfire, you start running automatically.
Dann rennen sie automatisch.
Horst Krieter, a Berlin petrol pump attendant, was in the thick of the action that day.
We threw stones at the tanks. Seeing the tanks firing in your direction, the sheer sound of it causes you to piss in your pants. Someone had died on the Marx Engels Square that day. He was run over by a tank. There was a blanket and a wooden cross which said "murdered by the Soviet Army." It was a day of glory for me. We showed them what could be done. The police could do nothing. The government could do nothing. The secret police, the Stasi, could do nothing.
Over 50 civilians were killed that day. In the clampdown that followed, more than 20,000 were arrested, scores were executed. The country's leaders had been caught off guard. From now on, security and the control of the people would be the government's overriding concern. The people themselves were concerned about simply getting by. The 1950s were austere times, and food and goods were in limited supply. Families and organizations in West Germany sent aid packages to the east.
We were so happy and surprised as we lived such a frugal life. When the package arrived, we couldn't believe our eyes. The wrapping was so attractive and colorful. We'd never seen anything like this. Roland, the youngest, couldn't open the presents fast enough, helping Wolfgang beaming at his discoveries.
In 1954, my father received the 8mm camera AK-8. These are the first films he recorded at Christmas. I'm the baby, 18 months old. That's his self-made gramophone. We lived in Berlin in Karlshorst, which was under Soviet occupation. Only state functionaries and those employed in ministries were allowed to live there. My father worked in television as a cameraman. He was, of course, a member of the party, but he wasn't totally convinced about it. My mother's wearing a necklace. Of course, that's only for the film. Now she's trying out the new vacuum cleaner. It's called the Omega. It was East Germany's people's vacuum cleaner. In 1960, Khrushchev came to East Germany. When he passed through Karlshorst on his way to the airport, my class and I had to wave. Only much later, when I developed the film and got it back home, I realized I'd waved at Erich Milke, the head of the Stasi, who was sitting next to the driver.
Der saß nämlich vorne neben dem Fahrer. Also in den 50er Jahren war man natürlich im Westen.
In the 1950s, people had few creature comforts.
Man hatte sich also für jedes gefreut, was nicht jeden Tag gab.
We were happy when we got hold of goods which weren't available every day, like bananas, which we bought in the West. Before 1961, it was still possible to drive into West Berlin.
On August the 13th, 1961, construction began on the Berlin Wall. East Germany called it an anti-fascist protective wall designed to keep the West out. In fact, it was built to lock East Germans inside their socialist paradise. Around 3 million of them had already fled to the West, threatening the very existence of East Germany. One of those preventing people from escaping was Hagen Koch, the young pioneer at Dresden, who was now a member of the expanding Ministry of State Security, known as the Stasi.
In the afternoon, we reached the border crossing at Checkpoint Charlie. I was ordered to paint a thick white line on the street at that border crossing point. I stood with one leg in the west and the other in the east, and my assignment was to show the evil, and I repeat, evil people in the west, so far and no further. Capitalism is over there, and here is socialism. I painted that line and was still firmly convinced that that border would avoid a Third World War and help to maintain peace. Many people were against it. I was not the only person who was for it.
Growing up behind the wall were these schoolchildren in the village of Golzow. They were about to become the subject of a long-term television project. Winfried Jerschel was the youngest child in his class.
They built a new rural school, brand new and impressive. It was an East German film, and an East German film was always a propaganda film. They obviously wanted to communicate the message that a small village has a brand new school and all the children are happy.
I
remember that the questions at school became more probing, such as what does the Sandman look like? They wanted to see what programs we were watching at home. During the early years, they imprisoned people when they watched television from the West. Our antenna was always pointed towards the West. The teacher tried to find out if people were watching television from the West.
Winfried wanted to be an inventor and was of a practical, inquiring nature.
We learned a lot about the political theories of Marx and Lenin. Once I asked my teacher, when does the real communism start? Real communism without money. The teacher was obviously as smart as I was and said that we would succeed in trading without money sometime after the millennium. As an ignorant child, I thought that's fantastic.
Most East Germans, like Jürgen Hartwig, the baby in the 1950s home movies, conform to what the state required of them. Here he attends his Jugendweihe, a secular coming-of-age ceremony for 14-year-olds introduced by the communists. Despite appearances, however, Jürgen was no communist.
I was actually West-orientated. I was interested in beat music. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones. It was clear I wasn't a socialistically orientated person who would wear a blue shirt for the free German youth. I started wondering how to make it to the West. I tried to escape through Hungary in 1973, but things went wrong and I was sent to prison for 2 years.
By the late 1970s, disillusion with the reality of life in East Germany was spreading.
This is my farewell video. I was 19, had just passed my A-levels and going into military service. It was a real rite of passage. This is my room in Dresden, in my parents' house. All the posters of my ideals, my dreams, all these were shattered.
Learning the truth about the Warsaw Pact's invasion of Czechoslovakia, which had happened a decade earlier, was a defining moment.
This is footage from East German TV of some of our tanks, like the ones that advanced into Czechoslovakia in 1968. I actually remember being there, aged 10, looking at the tanks leaving for Prague, and I remember winking at one of the soldiers. But when I joined the army, I realized what they had done, and I felt angry and betrayed.
Such feelings could only be expressed privately. The public face of East Germany promoted the economic and scientific achievements of real existing socialism.
Space exploration and the achievements of the Soviet cosmonauts were reflected in the Sandman. They had something to do with the belief in progress. It was believed that communism would also be established in space. Obviously, it was used to make socialism appear victorious.
With 1 in 6 of its population informing on the rest. High up on the watch list of the state's enemies was the emerging punk rock movement.
All I wanted was to have a bit of fun, but the state obviously saw it differently. We were criminalized, we were politicized.
Chaos was the lead singer in a punk rock band called Wuttenfall, meaning fit of rage. His best friend Zappa was the bass guitarist. What Chaos didn't know was that his best friend was a Stasi informer.
My code name was Captain. They gave me a phone number, and when I called, I was to say Captain speaking.
Zappa had succumbed to persistent Stasi pressure for information about the punks he knew, and signed an agreement with the secret police.
The Stasi dictated to me a 2-page text full of that gibberish, saying, "I swear not to undertake anything against socialism, and I will work with the Ministry of State Security." I simply thought that I'd sign it, and then they'd let me go, and I'd be done with it. But they had that lousy signature of mine. So they continued to approach me and say, "You've signed it, so now you can tell us when the concerts are." And I had to sit around at the Stasi building for hours and hours. I said, "Okay, I will inform you when the concerts take place."
I didn't expect it to be so drastic for me. By the end, there were 9 informers set on me.
The Stasi gave me a flat so they would know where I was. In return, I had to swear that I would vote in the next elections.
Chaos only found out about his best friend's treachery after the wall came down, when he read his Stasi file.
I felt great disappointment at my friend's behavior, especially because of the breach of trust.
It was a mistake. It was a horrible year. I was at the mercy of the Stasi.
Stasi hatte mich ja dann auch in der Hand und so.
Heidi Krieger's life was also dramatically affected by the Stasi. Heidi was one of communism's star athletes. She went on to win the gold medal in the shot at the 1986 European Championships.
I loved being a sporting champion for East Germany. I liked representing my country abroad. Simply because my narrow-mindedness would make me believe, with our achievements, we strengthened the Socialist Republic.
Die Sozialistische Republik. But Heidi paid a heavy price for her sporting success. Unwittingly, Heidi was one of 10,000 East German athletes who were part of a Stasi-run doping program.
At one point, shortly after I'd turned 16, the coach suddenly started giving me packs of pills. He would tell me, these are to help you, everyone takes them. You'll handle the training program better, you won't get ill, and if you're injured, you'll recover more quickly. I trusted him and started taking those pills. There are teenagers whose sexuality hasn't been fixed yet during adolescence, and probably I was in that situation. I was neither fish nor fowl. In that period, they gave me those pills. Because of the pills, my balance switched over to the masculine side.
Massive doses of anabolic steroids over several years changed Heidi's body forever.
I realized they'd made a lab rat out of me because they saw my potential. East Germany has taken my life away from me, and without asking. I wasn't allowed to decide for myself what I wanted to become.
The effects of the doping system finally forced Heidi to undergo a sex change operation. And today, Heidi is called Andreas.
Heidi still exists. I'm still a bit Heidi. That is my life. I used to be a woman, and I'll probably always remain a woman up to a certain extent.
The man ultimately in charge of East Germany's doping program was Stasi leader Erich Mielke, filmed here on a hunt. This is the Schorfheide. The Kaiser hunted here. Nazi leaders hunted here. And hunting here was a way of life for some Politburo members, a time when important business was done.
We usually went hunting on Tuesdays after the Politburo meeting.
Mielke was an enthusiastic but inaccurate hunter.
Mielke had specific ideas about hunting because he wasn't a very good shot. The forester who went with him had to intervene and shoot the prey to try and make him look successful at least once during the hunt.
Stasi officer Bernd Bruckner was party leader Erich Honecker's bodyguard. His boss was addicted to hunting.
Auch hier war zielstrebig, nahm sich etwas vor.
Honecker was determined. It might have rained cats and dogs or even snowed, and he would still want to go hunting with his fur hat on.
Auf unsere guten, treuen, zuverlässigen Yachthelfer, unsere Genossen des Bezirkes Erfurt, die hier angetreten sind, ein dreifaches Heute! 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 Die Staatsjagd ist beendet.
Animals had to be imported from other Eastern Bloc countries like Hungary, because they'd killed so many.
Und da wurde das dann zeitweise schon übersteigt.
They overdid it. From time to time they didn't respect the hunting restrictions on certain game.
Sondern dass dann auch zeitweise
They shot everything. That was too much.
Former Golzo schoolboy Winfried still appeared to be buying into the communist dream. He's getting married to Sabine, whom he met at a dance. They enjoy a good socialist wedding. But at work, Winfried is in trouble. He's joined the party, but is summoned to appear before a party meeting for misrepresenting his qualifications.
We
are meeting to decide how to punish you for your wrongdoing. Which we might have to record in your party book. We will give you a chance to defend yourself. You must tell us what you did for the party. And explain why we, as a collective, should not punish you.
It's been made clear to me by you that I must never lie again while working in the factory. I would have liked to travel to the West and probably would have stayed there, but it wasn't possible, so I had to make other plans. I played along with the system.
By the mid-1980s, East Germany was a decaying ordinary people's lives. The fact that such images were exhibited at all is as surprising as their realism.
Ja, in der Zeit, als ich da im Gummiwerk in Thüringen.
While I was in the plant that makes rubber in Thuringia, I met Andreas, king of soot. His job was to weigh the soot and mix the right amount with the rubber. Every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, there'd be a big guards procession in Unter den Linden by the Stasi Guards Felix Dzerzhinsky regiment.
Das war dieses Felix Dzerzhinsky.
There used to be the same old man leading the parade, who would march as though he was the Führer, the leader. I often remember Tamerlan. She was that powerful type of woman. Her flat looked horrible. One day I was lying on the grass in an area where new building was going on. I had a hangover. I felt a breeze on my cheek, opened my eyes and saw a little girl with blonde hair and snow-white skin. I told her, "You look like an angel," and she answered, "I am an angel." She ran away and came back dressed as an angel.
Gundela's photos prompted great interest from the Stasi. They had plans to arrest her on bogus charges of working for the CIA.
In the ceiling of my studio was a beam which was hollow. I wasn't naive, and I was concerned about my photographs. I would hide them in that hollow beam. I always expected the Stasi to show up at some point.
A new generation was seeking alternative lifestyles outside party structures.
That's us in the Trabant.
That was the last really bad winter.
That was 1985. You were pregnant but didn't know it yet.
That's Roland trying to fix the Trabi. No petrol.
Mashed potato. And it was important that we could eat well, eat lots, eat fatty food.
I grew up in Dresden, where no West German TV existed. It was called the Valley of Unknowing. I was very unknowing in many ways. There's a saying, living in East Germany was like driving with the handbrake on. I felt that very much. You weren't allowed to do things independently. You always had to file a motion and wait for approval.
Einen Antrag stellen muss und auf eine Genehmigung wartet.
That was the summer of '85. We'd just fallen in love. We'd known each other 3 months and we dared go on holiday together.
Increasingly, official rallies like this one held little appeal for young East Germans like Andreas and Carmen. A spirit of rebellion was gradually emerging, sometimes in the most surprising places.
Bible didn't work. That is, communism as it was envisaged.
By now, even the Sandman was harboring illegal thoughts. This episode proved controversial, as paragliders were banned in East Germany to prevent people using them to escape across the border. And it is the border, and especially the wall, that remains the symbol of East Germany, shutting its citizens in and dividing families. Jutta Gallus-Fleck, with her 2 young daughters, made an unsuccessful escape attempt from East Germany. This led to her family literally being torn apart. Her 2 daughters were forcibly adopted by the state. On average, more than 7 people were imprisoned every day for trying to escape. Jutta was sentenced to 3 years in prison for attempting to flee East Germany.
All I was allowed to keep was one photograph where I was pictured with my girls, but I had to cut my head off from that picture. I had to cut my head off because I wasn't allowed to preserve any identity, just a number.
In their mother's absence, the girls threw themselves into dancing.
Every day at school we were told how bad capitalism was, and that our mother was a bad person, and that she had done wrong.
Jutta's freedom was eventually bought by West Germany. Over the years, the communist regime made over £1 billion from the trade in selling its own citizens. Once in the West, Jutta campaigned for the release of her 2 children.
I went to Checkpoint Charlie almost every day for 6 months. I'd put my placards on, and looking towards the east, I would say, "They are what I want." Honecker regime, give my daughters back. My children who are in forced adoption and who live in a state children's home, I want to have those children. Give me my children back.
Their only communication was via letters which were censored.
I can say we weren't allowed to draw Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse was Western propaganda. It was forbidden to draw such things.
After 6 years of separation, Jutta was finally reunited with her daughters in August 1988.
That was incredible. No one will ever be able to take that away from me. For us, that day is the day of our personal reunification. I'm very proud of the fact that we managed to make it happen before the wall came down.
By the autumn of 1989, discontent with the regime was growing apace.
That was the big demonstration in Berlin.
Curiously, it wasn't about getting rid of East Germany. That was not the issue. And neither was the reunification of Germany. It was about reforming our country. Back then, we still believed it would be possible to create another type of socialism. Now you see flowers attached to a police car. The security forces kept well back.
Unlimited freedom of travel was a very important demand. And when we got it, we lost many other things.
Many East Germans, like Carmen and Andreas, miss aspects of their socialist state. Guaranteed employment, generous welfare benefits, and a certain camaraderie are often cited as examples of what was lost when the Berlin Wall came down.
Actually, we used to lead a good life. There were many things in East Germany that disturbed us and made us angry, and I'm glad they don't exist anymore. But nevertheless, we had a good life in many ways.
Geht einmal zu Ende.
East Germany was a child of the Cold War, and its end came with the end of the Soviet Empire 2 decades ago. Given the revelations that have emerged since, from places like the Stasi files, it is perhaps surprising that anyone should feel nostalgic about it. Yet the country lasted for 40 years, long enough to produce a new kind of society. A socialist paradise it wasn't. But while few want communist East Germany back, some genuinely miss aspects of their lives there. Next time, the lost world of Czechoslovakia, where communism tried to reform itself and failed, consigning people to an era of forgetting.
Erinnern Sie sich dann und wann? Legen Sie die Rolle ein und sehen Sie sich's noch mal